We have lots of fitness regimens to choose from, but, unfortunately, few gratitude workouts. And we rarely find gratitude influencers on social media. As a rule, we need to fashion our own gratitude program. So here's a start, based on the wisdom of the great philosophers. If you follow these suggestions with a little discipline, you will conquer ingratitude and reap the reward that comes from showing true appreciation. Uncompromising quality. Enduring impact. Your support ensures a bright future for independent journalism.
If there is one statistic that best captures the transformation of the American economy over the past half-century. Over the course of a few decades, the chances of achieving the American dream went from a near guarantee to a coin flip. Ronald Reagan took office promising to restore growth by paring back government, slashing taxes on the rich and corporations, and gutting business regulations and antitrust enforcement. The idea, famously, was that a rising tide would lift all boats. Instead, inequality soared while living standards stagnated and life expectancy fell.
This story has been extensively documented. But a nagging puzzle remains. Why did America abandon the New Deal so decisively? And why did so many voters and politicians embrace the free market consensus that replaced it? One theory holds that the story is fundamentally about the white backlash to civil rights legislation. Another pins more blame on the Democratic Party's cultural elitism. Each theory is incomplete on its own. They go a long way toward making sense of the political and economic uncertainty we're living through.
Richard Nixon's Southern strategy exploited that rift and changed the electoral map. Since then, no Democratic presidential candidate has won a majority of the white vote. But their coalition, Dixiecrats as well as Northern liberals, fractured. Ronald Reagan eventually channeled that backlash into a free market message by casting high taxes and generous social programs as funneling money from hard-working Americans to undeserving welfare queens. Democrats are the tragic heroes. The mid-century economy was built on racial. Economic inequality was the price liberals paid.
Their methods were not those of institutional politics, but civil disobedience and protest. The rise of the New Left, Leonhardt argues, accelerated the exodus of white working-class voters from the Democratic coalition. Robert F. Kennedy emerges as an unlikely hero in this telling. Although Kennedy was a committed supporter of civil rights, he recognized that Democrats were alienating their working-class base. As a primary candidate in 1968, he emphasized the need to restore law and order and took shots at the New Left, opposing draft exemptions for college students.
The top marginal income tax rate was 70%. Deregulation led to an explosion of the financial sector, and Reagan's Supreme Court appointments set the stage for decades of consequential pro-business rulings. None of this, Gerstle argues, was preordained. It took the unusual confluence of a major economic crisis and a talented political communicator to create a new consensus. By the 90s, Democrats had accommodated themselves to the core tenets of the Reagan Revolution. President Bill Clinton further deregulated the financial sector.
Free market ideas had been circulating among a small cadre of academics and business leaders for decades, most notably. For the religious right, government was licensing abortion and preventing prayer in schools. And for working-class voters who bought Reagan's pitch, a bloated federal government was behind their plummeting economic fortunes. Reagan's message tapped into genuine shortcomings with the economic status quo. The generous contracts won by auto unions made it hard for American manufacturers to compete with Japanese ones.
According to the economic historian book, The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal Order, that piece is the severe economic crisis. The 1973 Arab oil embargo sent inflation spiraling out of control. Not long afterward, the economy plunged into recession. Median family income was significantly lower than it had been at the beginning of the decade. These changing economic circumstances, coming on the heels of the divisions over race and Vietnam, broke apart the New Deal order, but they play a less central role in his analysis.
His administration increased funding for Social Security and food stamps, raised the capital gains tax, and created the Environmental Protection Agency. Meanwhile, laissez-faire economics remained unpopular. Polls from the 70s found that most Republicans believed that taxes and benefits should remain at present levels, and anti-tax ballot initiatives failed in several states by wide margins. Even Reagan largely avoided talking about tax cuts during his failed 1976 presidential campaign. The story of America's economic pivot still has a missing piece.
Leonhardt's accounts might appear to be in tension, echoing the race versus class debate that followed Trump's victory in 2016. In fact, they're complementary. As the economist Thomas Piketty has shown, since the 60s, left-leaning parties in most Western countries, not just the US, have become dominated by college-educated voters and lost working-class support. But nowhere in Europe was the backlash quite as immediate and intense as it was in the US. A major difference, of course, is the country's unique racial history.